Have you ever stood at the edge of a decision so heavy, it felt like the weight of your entire past was pressing against your chest? What if every choice you made, every person you let in or pushed away, had been quietly shaping a moment you never saw coming? What happens when the past you thought you'd buried comes knocking, not with memories, but with intent? And what if the people you trust the most are the very ones weaving the threads of your unraveling? Loyalties will be tested. Desires will blur the lines between right and wrong. And in the heart of it all, someone must face the truth. Love isn't just about who you choose. It's about who you're willing to fight for. Stay close. Everything you thought was certain is about to be torn apart. There's a moment, just before everything changes, when life feels almost perfect, almost. Knox Wilder had tasted that moment, had held it in his hands like something fragile and sacred, praying it wouldn't shatter. He wasn't naive, he knew perfection was an illusion. But stability, peace, that he could fight for. Knox was the kind of man who didn't speak unless he meant every word. His emotions ran deep, often hidden beneath a calm, steady exterior. But beneath the surface, there was always a war between what his heart wanted and what his mind told him was right. And for a long time, that war had a name: Sarah. She had been the wildfire in his life, untamed, exhilarating, unpredictable. Sarah lived without boundaries, and she pulled Knox into that chaos with an effortless smile and a laugh that echoed in his memory like a song he couldn't forget. Their connection had never been clearly defined, friends, maybe more, maybe not enough, but the tension had always lingered, unsaid but undeniable. Then came Ivy Quinn. Ivy wasn't chaos, she was clarity. Intelligent, composed, strong in ways that didn't shout, but quietly endured. She carried her own scars, remnants of love that had betrayed her, but she didn't let them define her. With Ivy, Knox didn't feel lost, he felt grounded. She was everything he didn't know he needed. It hadn't been easy to choose. He remembered the night vividly, the night he stood between the fire and the calm, between Sarah and Ivy. Sarah's voice still echoed in his ears from that night. "So, what is this, Knox? Are you really ready to let go of us, for good?" His heart had clenched, but he'd stood firm. "There was never an us, Sarah. Not really. I need something real now. Something I can build, not chase." Sarah had smiled then, small, almost sad. "Then go. Build your future. Just don't pretend you're not leaving something behind." And that was the last they'd spoken, at least, that's what he believed. Now, months had passed. Knox and Ivy had built something close to peace. Late night talks, quiet mornings with coffee, the kind of love that felt safe, earned. Knox had let himself believe the past was over. But the past has a way of waiting, of watching, of choosing its moment. And somewhere out there, Sarah was still watching. The city had begun to feel different lately. Softer, warmer. Maybe it was the early spring light streaming through Knox's apartment window, or maybe it was the sound of Ivy's laughter drifting through the rooms like a promise he'd never thought he'd have. Knox had made his choice, and he was determined to prove, every single day, that it wasn't just a decision, it was a commitment. He left work earlier, picked up Ivy's favorite wine without her asking, stayed up late helping her study for the licensing exam she was chasing so fiercely. They didn't talk much about Sarah. In fact, they didn't talk about her at all. But silence, as Knox was learning, didn't always mean peace. One night, as they sat curled on the couch, Ivy's head resting lightly on his shoulder, she spoke, softly, cautiously, as if afraid of the answer. "Do you ever think about her?" Knox stiffened just slightly, then relaxed, pressing a kiss to the top of her head. "No. Not like that. But you do think about her." It wasn't an accusation. It was a statement. Calm. Unblinking. Ivy had a way of seeing through things, even things he tried to hide. Sometimes, he admitted. But only because she was a part of my life. Not because I regret anything. She nodded, but the silence that followed felt heavier than before. Ivy loved him, that much was clear. But love, for her, had never been a safe thing. She had learned that love could leave, love could lie, and sometimes love didn't choose you back. That fear lived in her eyes even when she smiled. Still, they moved forward. Day by day, moment by moment, crafting a life that felt sturdy, like maybe it could weather the storms neither of them dared to name. Then Rachel came back. Knox saw her by chance on a crowded street, sunlight catching in her hair as she stepped out of a cafe, phone in hand, eyes searching. For a second, his mind didn't register her. Just another face in the crowd. Then she turned and froze. Knox? Her voice hadn't changed. Smooth. Familiar. A voice from a different time. He blinked. Rachel. What the hell? He laughed, awkward, surprised. How long has it been? Too long, she smiled, walking up to him. I just moved back. I've been meaning to reach out. And just like that, the past cracked open a little wider. Rachel had never been complicated like Sarah, never intense like Ivy. She was simply Rachel, steady, sharp-witted, the kind of friend you called at 2 a.m. just to talk. They'd been close, once. Close enough that people asked if they were more. They weren't. Not really. Or at least, they hadn't been. Knox told Ivy that night, over dinner. I ran into Rachel today. Ivy's fork paused mid-air. Rachel. Yeah. She just moved back to town. Wants to catch up. Are you going to? I thought I might. Just as friends. It's been years. Ivy nodded slowly, but something shifted in her eyes. A flicker, quick, almost invisible. Okay, she said simply. But her mind was racing, even as she smiled. Because sometimes, the most dangerous threats don't scream, they whisper. At first, it was harmless. Casual texts. Quick coffee catch-ups. The occasional call late at night, where Knox would pace the living room, phone pressed to his ear, voice low enough not to wake Ivy. Rachel was easy to talk to, too easy. She had this effortless way of pulling the past into the present, like no time had passed at all. Knox didn't mean to lose track of time when they talked. But he did. Ivy noticed. She didn't say much, not at first. Just watched. Listened. Waited. One night, as Knox sat scrolling through messages, Ivy glanced up from her book. Her voice was calm, measured. Rachel again. Knox looked up, caught. Yeah. She's been dealing with some stuff, new job, moving in, that kind of thing. Ivy nodded, her gaze unreadable. You're spending a lot of time helping her. He hesitated. She's a friend. That's all. Ivy didn't push. She never did. But in her silence, Knox felt the pressure, the unspoken question tightening like a knot in his chest. Was he really done with his pass? Then came the afternoon that changed everything. Knox had left work early, the sky just starting to dim as he cut through a side street toward the coffee shop he and Ivy loved. That's when he saw them, two figures seated by the window, their heads bent close together. His breath caught. Rachel. And Sarah. He stopped dead in his tracks. It could have been a coincidence. It had to be, right? But as he stood there, watching, Sarah glanced around the cafe, paranoid, almost, and leaned in, her lips moving fast. Rachel was listening intently, nodding. And then Knox saw it. Rachel slid a piece of paper across the table towards Sarah, her fingers lingering for a second too long. Knox's heart pounded, cold and sharp. No way. No fucking way. When he finally confronted Rachel, it was like tearing through a veil he hadn't realized was there. They met at the park, neutral ground. Rachel smiled when she saw him, but Knox didn't return it. You and Sarah, he said flatly. You're friends. Rachel froze. Knox. Don't lie. Her shoulders slumped, and for a moment, she looked regretful. Maybe even guilty. We've known each other a long time, she admitted. Before I left the city, Sarah and I were close. Knox's voice was tight. Why didn't you tell me? Rachel looked away, hands clenched. Because I didn't come back, just to reconnect with you. Silence. Then she looked up, eyes shining with a mix of sorrow and something else, fear. Sarah never really let you go, Knox. She's been waiting. Watching. She knew I was coming back. And she asked for my help. Knox's blood turned to ice. Help with what? Rachel hesitated, then whispered. She wants you back. And she's not going to stop until she gets what she wants. Sarah had never been one to lose gracefully. When Knox walked away, she didn't scream, didn't beg. She simply smiled, that sharp, unreadable smile, and stepped back. But deep inside, something fractured. Knox hadn't just chosen Ivy, he had rejected Sarah, and that was something she couldn't forget. Wouldn't forgive. So when Rachel returned, Sarah saw her chance. A thread of the past, still intact. A way back in. She reached out to Rachel with a simple message. He won't stay with her forever. You know that, right? Rachel hesitated at first. Helping Sarah wasn't part of her plan. But then she saw Knox again, really saw him, and something stirred. He wasn't the same boy she remembered. There was a heaviness in his eyes now, a quiet tension in his smile. And the more time they spent together, the more Rachel realized the truth. Helping Sarah meant being close to Knox. And that was something she wasn't ready to walk away from. Their plan was simple, innocuous. Small meetups. Casual messages. Just enough to stir old memories. Just enough to blur lines. And Knox. He was slipping. Not into love, not into desire, but into confusion. Into guilt. Every time he saw Rachel, he questioned himself. Not about Ivy, but about whether he truly deserved her. Was he really ready to close the door on everything he'd been? Everything he'd felt? Meanwhile, Ivy watched. She wasn't a fool. She saw the late nights, the guarded phone calls, the way Knox's eyes flickered when she mentioned Rachel's name. She didn't confront him, not yet. But doubt crept in, slow and relentless. Then came the night the dam broke. Knox was in the kitchen, phone pressed to his ear, voice low. Ivy had just stepped out of the shower, towel wrapped around her, when she heard it. Rachel's name. She froze at the hallway's edge, invisible in the dim light, listening. I didn't mean to let it go this far, Knox was saying, tension thick in his voice. You and Sarah, this was never supposed to happen. I can't keep lying to Ivy. Rachel's voice was muffled, but Ivy caught the tone, urgent, desperate. Knox, listen to me. Sarah's not going to stop. She thinks she still has a chance, and I don't know how to fix this without losing everything. Silence. Then Knox's voice again, softer now, almost broken. I don't even know what the truth is anymore. Ivy stepped back like she'd been slapped. The hallway seemed to spin, her heart pounding in her ears. She didn't cry. Didn't speak. Just breathed. Later, as Knox came into the bedroom, his face weary, she was sitting at the edge of the bed, calm. Too calm. "We need to talk," she said quietly. He froze. "Ivy. I heard you, Knox." His face paled. "I'm not angry," she continued, her voice steady but laced with something deeper, pain. "I'm just tired. Tired of wondering if I'm enough for you. Tired of pretending I don't see you slipping away." Knox tried to reach for her, but she stepped back. Her eyes locked with his, sharp, vulnerable. "I don't blame you. I just need to know one thing." A pause. Breath held. "Did you really choose me? Or are you just running from what you couldn't face?" The message from Sarah came in just after midnight. "Meet me. One last time. You owe me that much." Knox stared at it for a long moment, thumb hovering over the screen. He should have deleted it. Should have ignored it. But he didn't. He couldn't. Not because he still wanted her, but because something in him needed to close this, truly close it. They met at the old bookstore downtown, the one they used to sneak into during late nights, flipping through dusty paperbacks, laughing over worn-out poetry. It was empty now, dimly lit, the air thick with nostalgia. Sarah was already there, leaning against the counter like she owned the place. She looked the same, but different. Colder. Sharper. Like someone who'd been waiting far too long. "You came," she said softly. Knox nodded, hands in his pockets, guarded. "You said it was important." She smiled, soft, almost wistful. "Do you remember the summer we got locked out of your apartment and slept on the rooftop? You brought that old radio, and we watched the sun come up." Knox didn't respond. Sarah stepped closer. "Don't pretend you forgot. You told me back then. You'd never felt more alive." He flinched. She reached out, fingers brushing his arm. "Are you really going to tell me none of it meant anything?" A long silence. Then, almost a whisper. "Are you sure you don't miss me, not even a little?" For a moment, everything stilled. Knox felt the pull, the past, the memories, the raw emotion. But then, he saw Ivy. Her face. Her voice. Her pain. And something in him broke free. He stepped back. "Sarah. I remember all of it. I won't pretend it didn't matter. But that's just it, it's the past." Her smile faltered. "I can't keep holding on to something that only exists in memory," Knox said, voice firm now. "I'm not yours anymore. I don't belong there. I don't belong to you." Sarah's eyes hardened, but behind them, something cracked. Knox turned to leave. And for the first time, Sarah didn't stop him. Across the city, Rachel sat alone in her apartment, staring at her phone. Her hands trembled. She had seen the fallout, Knox's anguish, Ivy's heartbreak, and the weight of it pressed down on her like a stone. She hadn't meant to fall into this mess. Hadn't meant to feel anything. But she had. And now, she had to make it right. The next morning, Rachel met Sarah at their usual cafe. This time, her tone was different. "It's over, Sarah. You need to let go." Sarah scoffed. "He came to see me, didn't he?" Rachel's voice sharpened. "And he left you. Because he's done. We both need to be done." Sarah stared at her, eyes cold. "You think you understand him? You don't. He was mine first." Rachel shook her head. "No. He was never yours. He's not a prize to win, Sarah. He's a person. One we've both hurt more than we ever should have." A beat of silence. Then Rachel stood. "I'm done being part of this." And with that, she walked away, finally choosing to stop the damage before it was too late. Trust, once broken, is hard to rebuild. Knox knew that. He could see it in Ivy's eyes, the way they didn't quite meet his anymore, the way her touch lingered just a second too short. She hadn't left him, but something inside her had pulled away. And he wasn't going to let it stay that way. Words wouldn't be enough. Not this time. Not after everything. So he started small. Deleted Sarah's number. Blocked it. No explanations. No goodbyes. He met Rachel one last time, not out of obligation, but out of gratitude. They sat in the same park where they'd first reconnected, the air cool and quiet. Knox's voice was calm, resolute. "I'm not angry. You helped me. In ways I didn't expect. But this, us, all of this, it has to end here." Rachel nodded, eyes glistening. "I know. I just hope I didn't ruin what you have with her." He met her gaze. "You didn't. I did that. But I'm going to fix it." And he meant it. Every day after that, Knox showed Ivy, not with promises, but with presence. He was there. Fully, completely. The past didn't haunt his eyes anymore. It had no place in the life he was building with her. At first, Ivy held her heart close, guarded. But slowly, the walls began to crack. She could see it in him, the man who had once been torn was now whole. And he had chosen her. Truly chosen her. Weeks passed. One morning, as they strolled through the old neighborhood, hand in hand, the sun caught in Ivy's hair, lighting her face like something sacred. Knox glanced at her, content. Peaceful. And then Ivy stopped. She turned to him, eyes locked with his, fierce and steady. "You fought hard for this, for us." Her fingers tightened around his. "And so have I." Knox tilted his head, curious. "Ivy." She took a breath, heart pounding. "I don't want to lose you over things that don't matter anymore. I'm done waiting. So instead of wondering when you'll ask." She dropped to one knee, a teasing smile playing on her lips. "Knox Wilder, will you marry me?" For a moment, he stood frozen, completely stunned. Then laughter burst from his chest, pure and full, his eyes shining. He knelt beside her, cupping her face with both hands. "I think I've been waiting for you to ask me that my whole life." They didn't have a perfect love. There were cracks. Mistakes. Moments of doubt and silence and things that should have been said earlier. But love was never meant to be perfect, it was meant to be real. Knox and Ivy had seen each other at their worst, had weathered storms not just of circumstance, but of the heart. And through it all, they chose to stay. To try. To fight, not against each other, but for each other. Because love, they learned, isn't just a feeling. It's a choice. One you make every single day, even when it's hard. Especially when it's hard. The past had shaped them. Had tested them. But it didn't define them. They weren't bound by old memories or lost chances. They were free to build something new. Together. And in the quiet moments, the stolen glances, the small gestures, the laughter after tears, they found something stronger than passion, deeper than desire. They found trust. And that, above all, was what made them unbreakable. Love is not a moment, it's a journey. One that demands honesty, forgiveness, and the courage to choose each other, again and again, no matter what came before. Because in the end, love doesn't ask where you've been. It asks who you're willing to become.